Hey everybody, the cloning and the healing tools got a tiny minor change to it, which for me makes all the difference in the world when it comes to using them. Alright, so let me show you a perfect example here. I'm going to zoom in on this photo. And what we want to do is I want to remove these lines from the photo, but they're intermixed in a pattern, basically, this pattern on the brick wall. But the lines are just kind of distracting to me. Okay? Well, inside of CS3, we had a clone source palette, which you now have an icon to get straight to it. Inside of CS3, you didn't. You had to go to the window menu. But now you can get straight to this clone source palette. And I'm going to turn off the overlay, which is really what to me was the main feature, but I just didn't like the way the overlay worked there. But let me show you what our problem would be if we didn't have this overlay at all. Alright, I'm going to hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt key on the PC, and I'm going to sample from right here. So I'm just going to click, and then I'm going to move my cursor over here, and I'm going to start painting, and watch what happens. We did not match the pattern on the wall up with what we were cloning over. All right, and the reason why we didn't match it up is because it's just kind of you're guessing what your paint over. All right, well, inside the clone source palette we have this show overlay option, and what we did not have was a clipped option. So I'm going to turn clipped off. Now with show overlay on, I'm going to sample. All right, and that's actually drop the opacity down a little bit. I'm going to sample, and you see what it's doing? It's moving an overlay of the image around with my brush, which was a step in the right direction, but it's just confusing. It's really hard to figure out what you're looking at. So now you have a clipped option, which clips the overlay to the brush. All right, so let me make my brush bigger, and you can see here. Let's go down here. Let's sample, and then watch my brush. See, as I move it over the window, see how it's showing you a semi-opaque preview of what we have sampled. If you come over here and you increase the opacity, it's going to show you a 100% preview. Now what I can do is bring this over, match it up to the right spot, and then click and start painting. And that way I get to keep the texture, I get to keep the pattern, and I don't have to have that annoying overlay throughout. It's just an overlay on my brush. It's a lot less obnoxious. All right, so as we go through here, you can see here, I just do the same thing, just sample, and then click and paint, and that way you'll be able to get a preview of what you're about to paint with. It also works with the healing brush tool. So when we come to the healing brush tool, and not necessarily that I would be healing on this image, but if I were healing, you could see here it gives you a nice preview of the image. And don't forget, if you want to see the full overlay, you can turn clipped off, and it gives you a full overlay preview, which you can always adjust the opacity, and you can see the entire image overlaid. But for me, just the addition of this clipped feature, which is actually on by default. So you don't have to remember anything. You don't have to do anything. This new feature is on by default. When you use the cloning and the healing brush, it shows you a preview of that brush and what you've sampled with on your brush preview on the screen. If you want to turn it off, you can always come over here. It's right inside that clone source palette. And again, when you're using the healing brush, you're going to see the icon for that clone source palette right up here at the top.